Part 15. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 147. After receiving the punch, Rog flew dozens of meters away. However, Rog quickly used the tree wings behind him to stabilize his body successfully. "What a powerful force!" Rog exclaimed. Point 6. He is not only agile but also very powerful. Rog quickly swung the machete and slashed at Point 6. After a while of rapid flight and receiving assistance, he swung the hardwood saw blade in his hands and slashed at the opponent's head. Point 6. The body quickly moved to the side, and then turned around degrees and hit Rog's wrist holding the sword with a flying kick. This kick was so powerful that it caused a sharp pain in Rog's wrist, and the hardwood saw blade in his hand was bounced off. After the hardwood saw blade in his hand was bounced off, Rog quickly flew into the air. Now, Point 6 melee combat has a huge advantage, making it impossible for him to start. "Huh, boy Rog, you really know how powerful I am now, right?" Point 6 roared at Rog in the air. Rog looked at Point 6 on the deck below and said, "I admit, you are indeed very strong." For Rog, the Point 6 below is indeed a very powerful enemy. The opponent is not only very flexible in fighting and speed, but also has great strength. However, Rog also has his own advantages. First of all, he is in the sky and has the advantage of maneuvering. And there are many cards that I can use. "Boy Roger, if you have the guts, come and compete with me on the deck," Point 6 said excitedly. Rog just looked at him silently, and then flew away. Only a fool would do it if he confronted him head-on. To fight against others, you have to use your own advantages. Now that Rog doesn't have an advantage in melee combat, you have to use your own advantages. Rog arrived on the deck and found a machine gun. The two soldiers looked at him dumbfounded and took away their machine guns. "Borrow it," Rog said as he carried away the machine gun and the magazine. Rog raised the machine gun and flew to where the Point 6 was before. At this time, Point 6 continued to march on the deck and knocked down some soldiers he met. Rog pointed the machine gun in his hand at the Point 6 below and shouted, "Point 6, look here." Point 6 looked up to the sky. I saw Rog still with his wings outstretched, and a machine gun in his hand. The machine gun rattled and fired tongues of flame, hitting the Point 6 on the deck below. Point 6, after being hit, it rolled for a while. Although this strong man has the kung fu of indestructible body, it is extremely dangerous to be hit continuously like this. After all, machine gun bullets were far more powerful than rifles and pistols, and Point 6's body was deeply dented in many places. Although he stood up again and ejected the bullets, some bullets were still hit and left blood pits on his body. Rog looked at the injured Point 6. Sure enough, these machine gun bullets had some effect. Rog continued to attack the Point 6 on the deck below with the machine gun in his hand. The dense bullets continuously hit this burly man, and Point 6 also hurriedly ran away on the deck. At this time, Ver and some officers and soldiers on the Hercules also saw the battle between Rog and Point 6. "It's Rog and the enemy, who seems to be the enemy of the Baroque studio," Ver said. On the other side, Sauron swam to a nearby warship after destroying the armed airship No. After Sauron arrived on the deck of the Sea Knight warship, he shook off the sea water on his body. "Oh, it really makes people feel happy," Sauron said with a breath. Just now he killed a once mighty armed airship in one go. When the officers and soldiers on the deck saw Sauron coming up, they all looked at him with great joy and admiration. "Did you watch the fight just now? It's him. Destroyed the enemy's airship. Just relying on the katana in his hand. What a tough guy. I can also do swordsmanship. I hope I can become his teacher." The officers and soldiers on the deck of the Sea Knight were all talking. But they all admire Sauron from the bottom of their hearts. Being able to kill such a powerful and fully armed airship with the samurai sword in his hand, no one on the deck of this warship does not admire Sauron's strength. Sauron is now a godlike figure in the hearts of these officers and soldiers. Sauron looked at the officers and soldiers ahead and said, "Hey, don't welcome me like this." At this moment, in the sea, Mother's Day, who had escaped from the pod that crashed into the sea, had already swam to the side of the sea knight. Mother's Day took out a grapple gun from her dress, and she aimed the grapple gun at the hull of the battleship. The grapple gun was aimed at the hull and fired the grapple. After the grappling hook hooked the side of the ship, Mother's Day pressed the button next to the grappling hook gun. The noose on the grappling hook brought Mother's Day's fat body upwards. Mother's Day quickly used the grappling hook to reach the deck. At this time, the deck was still filled with thick smoke and burning materials artificially created by those who entered Sanjin. After seeing all this, Mother's Day is no longer as elegant as before and is very angry. "These bastards actually dared to lie to me and even made me take off my makeup," Mother's Day said angrily. Under such circumstances, it seems that Mother's Day cannot continue to be quiet. She angrily took the shotgun out of her dress. "This angry fat woman is going to kill on this warship. Who are you?" With a sound, 2 fleet soldiers with rifles rushed over. Mother's Day looked at the 2 soldiers with extremely malicious eyes. 2 soldiers raised their rifles and were about to take aim. But in front of me, something like a ball was thrown at any time on Mother's Day. This spherical object was only the size of an egg, but it flickered in mid-air, and the 2 soldiers who were illuminated by the light were unable to open their eyes. Die. Shotgun fired in Mother's Day hand. 2 shotguns hit 2 soldiers hard. The soldier on the left was pierced through the chest, and blood shot far from his back. The soldier on the right had his head smashed, with brains and blood everywhere. The 2 corpses still had the heat generated by the shotgun, so they fell on the deck. On Mother's Day, I stepped on the corpses of 2 people with my feet. Her eyes were still full of hatred. Mother's Day wielding shotguns began to rampage on the deck of the Sea Knight. On the deck of this warship, Mother's Day began to attack everyone she met. Sauron, who had already rested on the deck, talked with other naval officers and soldiers. These officers and soldiers all admire him very much, and all kinds of compliments are endless. The captain of the Sea Knight went to Sauron himself and talked with him. At this moment, a shotgun sound resounded through the warship. Sauron's keen fighting instinct looked to one side of the deck. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 148. On one side of the deck, a fat figure walked towards us with a large shotgun in hand. Zorro looked at Mother's Day who was coming, and then said to the people around him, "Leave it to me." The captain of the warship and some other officers and soldiers understood Sauron's great strength, and they all stepped aside to let Sauron deal with her. Mother's Day is holding a shotgun, and her fat face is twisted, full of hatred and anger. This obese woman had already killed more than 20 soldiers along the way. "There are more people ahead, keep killing," Mother's Day said as she walked. After Mother's Day continued walking for more than 10 meters, suddenly there was a sound behind her. "Hey, are you from Baroque Studio?" Mother's Day looked back and saw a resolute man with short green hair standing there, with 3 knives on his waist. It seems that a guy who is not afraid of death has arrived. "The people who met me before were holding guns and aiming directly. You didn't even pull out the blade on your waist and still dared to face me like this. It's really admirable." Mother's Day seems to be a little more peaceful. Sauron didn't say any more nonsense and said directly, "You are the person on the airship that I destroyed just now, right?" After hearing Zorro's words, Mother's Day's eyes immediately froze, and her eyeballs almost bulged out. Her face also became extremely ugly. "What did you say? You destroyed the airship?" Mother's Day said with a trembling voice. "Well, why are you so surprised?" "And I still used the double swords on my waist," Zorro said calmly. "Asshole, you destroyed my most powerful aerial armed airship." Mother's Day was so angry that she almost exploded with anger. Zoro naturally didn't understand why Mother's Day was so angry. "You seem to be a capable person in Baroque Studio. Why are you so angry?" Zoro said. "How dare you destroy the airship I command? I'm going to kill you. I am the #1 weapons expert at Baroque Studio." "Mother's Day," Mother's Day roared. Mother's Day fiercely pointed the large shotgun at Zoro. There was a very loud gunshot, and the shotgun was shot out, and exploded into many small bullet fragments. But Sauron had already disappeared without a trace in front of her gun. Sauron moved swiftly to her left. "Hey, where are you shooting?" Zoro asked. After the failed attack on Mother's Day, the fat on her face quickly became more crowded and hideous. She quickly aimed the shotgun to the left. "Go to hell!" Mother's Day roared and fired another shotgun. Sauron's figure disappeared without a trace again. "Damn it, you bastard, give me my Mother Chang's bullets." Mother's Day was a period of crazy and violent shooting, and groups of shotguns shot out at Zoro, who repeatedly dodged. Sauron's figure was very flexible, and he judged and quickly dodged the moment before she pulled the trigger. For Zoro, just avoid the Mother's Day frontal shots. Although the opponent is using a gun, the time it takes the opponent from aiming to pulling the trigger is no faster than some superb swordsmen pulling out their swords or knives. Sauron just changed his view of enemies with shooting weapons and regarded them as another a style of swordsman will do. Under such circumstances, Sauron's long-term skills cultivated between life and death are very powerful. Zoro successfully dodged more than 10 attacks from the large shotgun used by Mother's Day. My face was covered in sweat on Mother's Day, and my face was red with anger. However, Sauron's flexible dodge also has a chance to crack. Mother's Day took out a spherical egg-sized sphere bomb from inside her dress and threw it into the air. This small bomb exploded in the air at a height of 3 meters, shining everything around it. At this time, Mother's Day also discovered Zoro's location and shot in Zoro's direction with the shotgun in her hand. "Ha ha ha, how about my flash bomb?" Mother's Day roared proudly. But when he looked carefully, Zoro was already lying on the ground. Mother's Day thought she had knocked down the opponent, but Zoro quickly rolled away and left here. When the flash bomb exploded just now, Sauron already felt that the situation was not good. So he lay down quickly, because the bright light of the flash bomb made it difficult for him to move from side to side. However, when Sauron was lying down, his body and legs were still hit by several bullet fragments. Of course, the injured Sauron would not give the opponent a chance to attack again. He quickly rolled around for a while and left here. After Sauron left quickly, he quickly stood up and hid in a room in a nearby tower. Mother's Day caught up again and broke into the tower. After entering the tower, there is a large room. Something like a hall where people gather. While walking in this hall on Mother's Day, I observed the surroundings. There was no other person in this hall. Sauron even disappeared without a trace. Mother's Day then put the shotgun away and pulled out a firearm capable of firing grenades. At the same time, she also took out a gas mask from inside her dress and put it on her face. "Okay, since you won't come out, then let's have a taste of this poisonous gas." Mother's Day used a grenade gun to fire a gas grenade into the hall. Gas grenades exploded here, and swarms of poisonous gas began to fill the air. At this time, behind a cabinet in the hall, Sauron was hiding here at this time, using the cloth strips torn from the clothes used by some fleet soldiers in the cabinet to bandage his body wounds. On the ground beside it was blood, and some bullet fragments dug out with the tip of a knife. "There's poison gas again, but fortunately the wound has been treated." Zoro quickly covered his mouth with some remaining cloth and rushed out of a nearby window. After rushing out of the window, Sauron was finally able to catch his breath. Back on the deck again, the hot and dry sea breeze blows constantly. These sea breezes are enough to blow away any poisonous gas. Mother's Day inside also rushed out again after discovering that Zoro had failed. However, The hot and dry sea breeze above the deck is enough to blow away any poisonous gas. It seems the poison gas doesn't work anymore. Mother's Day quickly took off the gas mask on her head. However, he still holds the grenade gun in his hand, and there are still many powerful types of grenade in it that can be used. She was holding a grenade gun and switched grenades again. "Okay, swordsman. I'll force you out," Mother's Day said. Mother's Day grabbed the grenade gun and fired a grenade at a nearby pile of boxes. The grenade exploded, but countless small nails flew out. This is a fragmentation nail grenade. A grenade contains hundreds of small nails, which fly around after a strong explosive force, and those who are hit will suffer unbearably. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 149. Clusters of crates were hit by fragmentation nail grenades and the surrounding area was covered in nails, but there was no Sauron here. Mother's Day continued its attacks with grenade guns aimed elsewhere. Sauron was hiding in a place where cannons were piled, and saw Mother's Day constantly using powerful grenade weapons to attack the surroundings. In addition to fragmentation nail grenades, Mother's Day also fired incendiary grenades from a grenade gun. The incendiary grenade contains chemical agents. Once it explodes and burns, it can make the surrounding objects stick to the incendiary agent. Zorro saw Mother's Day constantly attacking, and he couldn't remain passively defensive like this. It can't always be like this. Get ready to fight. Zorro had all three katana swords drawn out of their scabbards, two in his hands, one in his mouth, and a green turban on his head. Mother's Day is under constant attack with incendiary grenades. Suddenly, a figure rushed over from the side. It was Zorro holding three katana swords. Finally it's out. Mother's Day immediately pointed the grenade gun at Zorro and pulled the trigger. An incendiary grenade was fired at Sauron. Zorro did not dodge, but the three blades worked together to block the incendiary grenade. There was a violent explosion, and Sauron was surrounded by flames, but a surprising scene happened. Sauron jumped in mid-air, surrounded by the sword energy of the three samurai swords, and he himself was not burned by the flames. But the samurai sword held by Zorro's arms and in his mouth was covered with flames from the burning preparation. How could this happen? Mother's Day said in unimaginable shock. At this time, Zorro's three katana swords were burning with flames, and his arms were crossed on his chest. The whole person seemed to be a flaming god of death who came out of hell. Burning. Ghost killing. Zorro's whole body was like a flaming god of death, and all three knives struck him. Mother's Day's body. Three burning scorching blades accurately hit Mother's Day's body. Zorro's body fell several meters behind his opponent. He was half kneeling on the ground, the katana held tightly in his arms and the katana in his mouth were still burning flames. Zorro stood up again, only to see Mother's Day, who had been stabbed 3 times, fall down. Zorro looked at the fat woman who fell to the ground, and heaved a sigh of relief. The beheading just now was done only after Sauron had to fight for his life. But fortunately, Mother's Day was also knocked down. Zorro put the 3 blades back into their scabbards one after another and continued, "It's really difficult to deal with." At this moment, Sauron suddenly felt a murderous aura coming from his back. Sauron dodged to the side abruptly, and gunshots rang out behind him. Zorro stepped aside and turned around to see Mother's Day holding a large shotgun pointed at his previous position. Mother's Day is not dead. Not only is she not dead, but she is still able to move like this after being hit by those 3 knives accompanied by high-temperature flames. Not even that seriously injured. Mother's Day quickly pointed the shotgun at Zorro. Zorro quickly dodged and distanced himself. Mother's Day fired continuously but failed to hit Zorro. Zorro pulled out Yuki Zorro and Onitsu from the scabbard at his waist in the distance. Zoro looked at Mother's Day and asked loudly, "Hey, why didn't you fall down?" "Ha ha ha, let me show you." Mother's Day tore the dress on her upper body, revealing an armor made of steel. "So that's what it is like," Zoro said. Unexpectedly, the opponent's body was also covered with armor. It's no wonder that the three sword strikes just now did not hurt the opponent. Mother's Day shouted in a loud voice, "Hey, bastard swordsman! Do you think I will fight without any protection? I am a master of powerful offensive and defensive weapons in the Baroque studio." Mother's Day put away the shotgun again, raised the grenade gun again, pointed the grenade gun at Zoro, and fired a grenade. Sauron quickly dodged the grenade and quickly jumped aside. This grenade also exploded, and countless small nails flew out of it. This is a fragmentation nail grenade. The countless small nails inside flew around under the powerful force generated by the explosion. Sauron was still within the range, so Sauron hurriedly used Yukaizu and Onitsu to resist these small nails. Still, some of the nails struck Sauron in the legs and stomach. Sauron quickly rolled over again, and got behind a row of wine barrels nearby. Zoro felt a pain in his body, especially in his legs and abdomen. "But I can't control that much now." Mother's Day came this way again, aiming at these wine barrels with another fragmentation nail grenade. The barrels were hit by grenade explosions and flying nails, and a lot of wine flowed out of them. The wine quickly flowed to Sauron's side. Sauron's nose is extremely sensitive to alcohol due to years of drinking. It's some high-quality rum, and it's high strength. A confident smile appeared on the corner of Sauron's mouth. On Mother's Day, I continued to install new incendiary grenades, because the attack effect of the fragmentation nail grenade was too poor. "I will blow you to pieces," Mother's Day said viciously. At this moment, Sauron suddenly rushed out, carrying a huge wine barrel half as tall as a person on his shoulders. "Come on, fat lady!" Zoro jumped up suddenly and rushed towards Mother's Day. Mother's Day raised the grenade gun in his hand. Zoro suddenly threw the wine barrel he carried towards Mother's Day. An incendiary grenade is fired on Mother's Day. The barrel was already on top of Mother's Day, and the grenade hit the barrel. The barrel was blown to pieces, and the strong rum inside quickly burned, wrapping all the Mother's Day underneath in flames. On Mother's Day, my whole body is burning with flames. "What?" Mother's Day screamed loudly. At this time, Sauron was spinning with two knives in mid-air. Fire flame. Rhinoceros. The sword energy formed by Sauron's two swords brought up the flames to form a firestorm, and hit Mother's Day hard. The powerful thrust pushed Mother's Day out of the deck. Covered in flames, Mother's Day fell into the sea. Mother's Day, who suffered extremely serious injuries, struggled in the sea water and finally sank gradually. Sauron stood beside the warship, looking down. "This time, she will definitely not be able to climb up." Zoro gasped for a while, and put Swezu back into the scabbard. He finally ended the battle now, but his body was really aching for a while. Sauron sat down and examined his legs. There were 5 small nails in each of his legs. There are 3 small nails on the abdomen. Zoro used Ghost's sword to dig out these small nails. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 150. After Zoro dug out all the small nails in his legs and abdomen, he stood up again and started walking. At this time, the captain and officers and soldiers of the warship came over. They all saw the fierce battle just now. Many people's admiration for Sauron is even higher. Sauron looked at these people and said, "Well, I have already killed the remnants of the Baroque workshop that boarded the warship. Everyone can rest assured." Then, the compliments of these officers and soldiers filled Sauron's surroundings. "You are so powerful, swordsman. Swordsman, your swordsmanship is unparalleled. And your combat power is unimaginable. If there is a world's best swordsman from now on, it will definitely be you. Please the swordsman accept me as his disciple." All kinds of compliments came to Zorro like a flood. Sauron just smiled bitterly and said, "Hey, I just want some drinking water and medicine now." After Sauron resolved Mother's Day, things were finally over on the Sea Knight's side. On the other side, on the deck of the Hercules, Rog and Point 6 continued to fight fiercely. The burly and strong Point 6 on the upper body was hiding under the continuous shooting of Rog's machine gun in mid-air. But this strong man is also waiting for an opportunity to fight back. "Asshole, try this." Point 6 found a wooden barrel and threw it towards Rog in the air. At this time, Rog, who was more than meters above the deck, dodged the barrel. After Rog successfully dodged the barrel, seeing that the Point 6 had no effect, he quickly fled to a cannon on the deck. The strong man lifted the cannon abruptly and filled the shells. Seeing the actions of this strong man, Rog really felt that the other party was really an enemy with both martial arts and brute force. He aimed the cannon at Roger in the air and pulled the rope. After a loud bang, a cannonball was fired at Rog. Roger fell in an emergency and avoided the shell in time. The shell exploded more than 10 meters above Rog. Rog quickly changed direction and soared higher again. "Huh, it's really dangerous. But it seems I should change some weapons." Rog threw down the machine gun he had picked up in his hand. Rog flew to the area near the stern of the Hercules again, and found a harpoon that could be launched from there. Harpoons can be said to be very powerful. This Hercules is equipped with many harpoons with mechanical spring devices because it has to deal with large marine life such as sea kings or whales. It's really heavy. Rog picked up a 3-meter-long large ejection harpoon and flew up again. After flying to the previous location, Rog saw that the Point 6 below was still here. The time was too short and he didn't leave much, but he took the opportunity to quickly collect some weapons. "Boy Roger, try the cannon." This time, Point 6 held a cannon in each hand and held the 2 ropes between his teeth. The burly man pulled the drawstring fiercely with his mouth. 2 cannons sounded, and 2 shells were fired from the 2 cannons and flew towards Rog. The trigger was also pressed on the large harpoon that Rog was holding. The huge harpoon is also shot below Point 6. In the air, 2 shells and a large harpoon passed by. Rog immediately wrapped the wings of the tree's wings around himself, allowing himself to fall. The Point 6 on the deck ducked quickly. 2 violent explosions above Rog rushed the falling Rog down at a more violent speed. Rog fell heavily to the deck, wrapped in tree wings, and Rog could still feel the powerful pain. The whole body is full of bones that suffer from falls and stress. After the sound disappeared and stopped, Roger stood up again. "Damn it, it feels like all the bones in my body are broken," Rog said as he struggled to stand up again. Rog, who was struggling to stand up, was in pain all over his body, and his tree wings were also severely impacted and severely damaged. Rog simply discarded the tree wings. Then glanced at the location of Point 6. I saw that Point 6's right side of the abdomen was seriously injured. The blood gushing out there dyed his lower body red. Behind this strong man was that huge harpoon. The blow just now did not hit directly, but it also seriously injured the opponent. Now, Point 6's eyes were filled with bloodshot eyes, looking at Rog with pain but hatred. But he also saw that Rog was obviously injured. Point 6 gritted his teeth and said hard, "Boy Roger, I really can't kill you." Rog looked at him and said, "If you surrender, it's still too late." Point 6, his dull and fierce eyes quickly became almost bulging. His face was filled with endless pain and anger. "Why do you actually want me to surrender to you? Stop dreaming. I'm a tough guy." Point 6 is full of extreme fury. "Really? Then there's nothing we can do," Rog said. Point 6 gritted his teeth, took one of the more than 100 artillery shells piled around him, and lit the fuse with a simple ignition machine. The shell burned quickly, and Point 6 placed it in the shell pile. When Rog saw it, he quickly turned around and ran away. Point 6, no one can make me surrender." In a burst of high-pitched shouts, it was accompanied by an earth-shattering explosion. The impact of the violent explosion threw Rog flying. Point 6 I was buried in the flames caused by the explosion. Roger finally fell heavily on the deck, almost being washed out of the ship. After the explosion of more than 100 shells, not only did the Point 6 turn into fly ash, it also caused serious damage to the deck of the Hercules. Ver and other officers and soldiers were dodged aside by the explosion. The explosion even affected the second main mast in the central area. Although the main mast was made of steel combined with fine wood, it was also blown off abruptly and fell down due to the impact. The decks of the Hercules were a mess. After the explosion, Rog struggled to get back up. "Damn it, my whole body hurts like crazy." Rog stood up hard. Now Rog's whole body is scorched black, and there are a lot of blood stains, and he has internal and external injuries. Looking around again, it was already a mess. The deck was littered with various pieces of blown wood and steel, and a huge mast also fell down. The burning smoke soared into the sky and the flames continued to rage. Standing up and looking around, the strong man who was full of powerful momentum just a few minutes ago no longer exists. In the end, this man did not act as a pawn for Crocodile and Baroque Studio, but for his dignity as a powerful warrior, so he made the final move. Would rather commit suicide than surrender. "You are indeed a man," Rog said to the front. For example, there are elites gathered in the Baroque Studio, and Rog also respects such a warrior with his own dignity from the heart. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 151. Now the remaining enemies on the Hercules have also been wiped out. Ver also walked to Rog's side, and he was surprised to see the scars on Rog's body. "Vars, the enemy is already dead," Rog said. "This is really a fierce battle. Fortunately, you won. But you should bandage the wound quickly," Ver said. Rog also felt the pain for a while now, and when he relaxed, there were constant pains inside and outside his body. "Okay, thank you for your concern. I want to know how Sauron is doing," Rog said. "Sauron is also very good. He not only destroyed another airship, but also defeated a remaining strong enemy. Now we can be sure that the enemies of the two armed airships have been eliminated," Ver said. After hearing this, Rog relaxed even more, and said, "Very good. I also suffered a lot of injuries and needed treatment." After this fierce battle, 3 warships sank, and the remaining 5 were also damaged to varying degrees. The 2 advanced aerial armed airships of Baroque Studio were all destroyed. Mother's Day and Point 6 died in battle. Ver began to command the remaining fleet soldiers to sail towards the port quickly, preparing to repair the warship, rescue the fallen and injured officers and soldiers, and capture the enemies who escaped from the armed airship in the air. In the port area, Chopper, Luffy, and Usopp all witnessed the battle. "It's really spectacular. When the 2 airships were destroyed just now, it was really exciting," Usopp said with high spirits. Chopper looked at him and asked, "Rog and Zoro are so powerful, have they always been like this?" Usopp checked his face and said mysteriously, "Do you know why?" "Why?" Chopper said with a very curious look on his face. "Because Captain Usopp taught them fighting skills," Usopp said. "You're amazing," Chopper said in surprise. Luffy held down the straw hat and looked at the 5 warships coming to the port. "It was so cool to see that just now. I'm hungry. There is food on the warship. But it's a pity that the ship that sank just now seems to have the previous victory banner, and the food loaded in it is really delicious," said Luffy. 5 scarred warships returned to the port, and Rog, Sauron, and Ver all disembarked from the warships. Rog and Sauron received Chopper's treatment. When Chopper saw the 2 of them, he immediately took out the medical equipment in his backpack for treatment. Luffy couldn't wait to eat and drink the food taken out of the warship. Ver was busy with business and hurried to continue commanding the troops. 5 warships need urgent repairs, and damaged units need to be rested. Rogue, Zoro, Usopp and Chopper were in a house at the port for treatment and conversation. At a bedside, Roger was being treated by Chopper. This little guy is not big, but he is extremely shrewd in medical skills. Your internal organs have been squeezed and impacted to a certain extent, and there is some internal bleeding, but fortunately, it is not too serious. You need to take some antibiotics, platelet coagulation medicine, and medicine to promote the body's rapid healing. Chopper used some auscultation said after the mechanical investigation of visceral dynamics combined with the diagnosis of Rogue's blood vessel characteristics. After Chopper's diagnosis, he quickly took out some medicines he wanted to use. Some of them were the medicines he collected after coming to Kingdom Zingon. Chopper is not as idle as Luffy and Usopp. After all, he is still a doctor and needs to buy enough medicines and medical books in such an important area. Roger is now drinking and swallowing all kinds of pills and potions. Although some tastes are very uncomfortable, but now in order to recover as soon as possible, Rogue also psychologically regards them as delicious food and wine. Chopper also helped Rogue treat the trauma. Rogue suffered 3 fractures in his ribs and his left arm was also fractured. Chopper also helped treat him. Wounds on the body surface were also bandaged and applied. It's fine to send it off, Chopper said with sweat on his face. He finally helped Rogue to bandage a shoulder injury. Roger looked at the struggling Chopper and said, "You are really an amazing doctor." Chopper, thank you so much. Chopper, who heard the praise, became very shy and shook his body. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with his reindeer hoof, and said, "Rogue, don't you keep praising me like this." Rogue continued, "I praised you there, is this true?" Chopper was even more delighted after receiving Rogue's praise. Sauron was healed by Chopper before Rogue. Now he, too, is covered in bandages, sitting on another adjacent bed. However, the 3 samurai swords on the waist of this tough guy swordsman were placed aside. Beside Zoro, Usopp talks to him. But Sauron's mind was not there. Every time Usopp asked a question with great interest, Sauron would answer it very simply. "You are really amazing. But without me here, otherwise Mother's Day will definitely die faster," Usopp said with some regret. Sauron also didn't say anything, and continued to move his body. Chopper's treatment just now can be said to be extremely effective, and now Sauron basically feels no pain in his body. However, the biggest problem with this swordsman who loves fighting and training is that he is likely to undo the bandages on his body in advance. At this time, the door to the room was opened. It was Luffy with a bag of food on his back. Luffy was still chewing on a beef leg. "Hey, everyone. I brought the food from the warship," Luffy said to Rogue and the others. Rogue looked at Luffy and said happily, "Thank you for your hard work. I'm already hungry." "Is there any dessert?" Chopper asked. "I want to drink some juice," Usopp said. "Do you have any wine?" Zoro asked. The 5 of them ate together in this room. In port, the injured fleet soldiers were all treated in houses in the port area with the help of the ship's medical staff. The ship repairmen on the warship and some soldiers are repairing the warships. On the shore of the port, Ver and more than a dozen senior military officers were discussing together. "We suffered heavy losses this time. 3 warships were sunk, including the flagship Victory Banner. The casualties of officers and soldiers reached more than 1,200. We have more than 4,400 troops left. All 5 warships need urgent repairs for at least 2 days before we can continue." "Navigation and combat," a senior military officer reported. After hearing the report, Ver looked at the 5 warships that were urgently repaired. Fortunately, the decks of the 5 warships were mainly damaged, otherwise more serious overhauls would be required. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee are a dream. Chapter 152. Everyone, we will do our best to repair these warships. Our side will still face many crises in future battles, Ver said. As you order, Commander, said the officers. An officer asked Ver, Commander, we now need a large amount of supplies. We have purchased enough supplies in the city. Ver nodded, and said again, but be careful, there are many henchmen of Baroque studios in the urban area. Be careful to strictly test the purchased materials to prevent them from tampering with it. Yes, Commander, said the officer. Ver said again, we also captured some enemies this time and interrogated them strictly. Yes, a total of 14 enemies were captured this time. They were willing to surrender soon, but we will strictly judge the authenticity of the information they provided, said an officer. Ver continued to direct the fleet's repair work. In the house where Rog and the others were next to the port, Rog, Usopp and the others talked about Vivi, Sanji and the others. Now our place is temporarily stable, but what about Wei and Sanji, Rog said with some worry. Chopper ate a piece of cream cake and said, I really hope they're okay. Usopp said while drinking a bottle of juice, I miss Sanji's cooking, but Vivi and Sanji landed at the rapeseed flowers. Although there are rebels there, it may be safer than us. I've contacted them via telephone bug telegraph, and it doesn't seem like there's much danger. That's fine, Roger said. The day before Rog and the others arrived at the new port of the kingdom, Rapeseed, a port city south of the eastern region of Alabasta. Vivi, Sanji, and Nami came here together. They were accompanied by 8 warships. At this time, the 8 warships were moored in the port area of Rapeseed Flower. After 3 people and 1 duck stepped down from the ladder on the side of the warship, they officially landed on the land of Alabasta. This is the Alabasta that we have been away from for several years. Wei looked at everything around her with a long-lost feeling. The one running fast on the side was already in tears. It wiped the tears with its duck wings and shouted, Gah! Sanji looked at the port, flicked the cigarette butt in his mouth, then took a deep breath and exhaled a smoke ring. Oh, this is Alabasta, a really refreshing desert kingdom. But we are not here to enjoy the scenery. At this point, Sanji curled his eyebrows and frowned. The eyes became sharp. We are here to mediate the war. I am responsible for protecting the safety of Princess Vivi and Miss Nami. This is the responsibility of a gentleman, Sanji said in a very imposing tone. Then Sanji quickly came to Wei Wei's side again, as if he was about to stick to Wei Wei, and said to Wei Wei very kindly and enthusiastically, Princess Wei Wei, please rest assured. I will be responsible for the whole process to the end. No matter if there are any enemies die, and my legs will kick them into the sky. Seeing Sanji being so attentive, Wei Wei said gratefully, thank you, Sanji. After hearing Wei Wei's words of thanks, Sanji said with full of love, Princess Wei Wei, I will protect you to the end. The fast runner was also on the side, waving his duck wings with an imposing look and shouting, Gah! Even running fast is full of fighting spirit, and he wants to help Wei Wei solve her difficulties. What's more, Alabasta is also its homeland. Nami kept looking around, she was very good at observing the customs of various places. This is not only determined by the characteristics of being a navigator, but also looking for opportunities to make money here. The scenery here is good, and if there is a civil war for a long time, it is not easy to have such a busy port, Nami said. The purpose of the group now is to mediate the current battle between the rebel army and the king's army. Vivi said to Sanji, Nami and Runkuai, what we need now is to stop this war. Sanji and Nami, as well as running fast, nodded. Although it doesn't have to be as dangerous as Rog and Sauron get rid of Crocodile. But it is also very difficult here. After all, what they are facing is a melee battle of millions of troops. In this case, even if the war is suspended, it will be very difficult. Alabasta is now at war between 2 extremely hostile and distrustful forces. Both the king's army and the rebel army distrust each other, and even a spark can still ignite a fire. Vivi and Sanji are trying to mediate in such a bad situation. Nami said to Wai Wei again, "So, what should we do next? It's better to try to contact the leadership of the rebel army and ask them to temporarily cease fighting. As for the king's army, it will be easier for me to handle it," Wai Wei said. After hearing this, Nami thought for a while, and said, "It's indeed very good. But let's talk about it first. How do you get in touch with the leadership of the king's army?" Wai Wei took out a letter from her clothes and said, "The capital of Aruba is here in the depths of the desert going north. I will let you run quickly to deliver this letter from my own handwriting to my father. The king's army is currently gathering in Arubana based on intelligence, because it is not only the heart of the kingdom, but also a super strong and fortified city. The king's army is also on the defensive as a whole. After receiving my personal letter, the king's army will completely keep quiet there." After hearing this, Nami looked at the running speed and asked again, "Can it really arrive safely?" Wai Wei looked at Kui and said, "K is very familiar with Alabasta. In the desert, it can run like no one else. It still has some friends in the desert. If it can cross the long desert, it will be no problem. As for worrying about attacks from Baroque Studio, I will give strict instructions to it." Running fast and full of fighting spirit, he shouted to everyone, showing that it is very reliable. But everything needs to take a certain risk, so there is no way. Sanji walked to the side that was running fast, looked at the duck for a while, and said, "Vivi, since this is the case, I'll quickly get him a set of desert travel drinks and lunch, so he can go early." Wai Wei nodded and said, "Okay, the sooner this matter happens, the better." Sanji immediately prepared a special thirst-quenching drink and some compressed food for desert travel. After finishing all these, Sanji hung a small bag and a wooden barrel of special drink on the fast runner's neck. After hanging up the things, Sanji patted the fast-running neck and said, "Hey, you should pay attention, save food and drink." As soon as he ran, he turned his head to Sanji, patted his chest and said, "Ga." Wai Wei walked up to the fast runner and said to it, "It's all up to you." Wai Wei conveniently tied a tightly sealed envelope under the fast-running duck's wings. In this way, it is generally impossible to see the letter from the outside. Even if you run fast, you can sense this letter at any time and protect this letter at all times. After handling the crucial envelope, Wai Wei patted the fast-running head. "Run fast, be careful," Wei Wei instructed. When running fast, he salutes with duck wings and shouts seriously, "Ga." Then he ran fast and started to change direction, starting to run along the desert northwest of Rapeseed Port. Once there, turn north. After all, it is safer to go to Aruba in the north in the desert. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 153. After successfully bidding farewell and running fast, Wai Wei turned her eyes to the rapeseed flowers in front of her again. This port city was the largest port in Alabasta before Kingdom Newport was established, and it is now one of the two largest ports along with Kingdom Newport. Although due to the war, the prosperity here has been greatly affected. But it's still pretty busy here. Because of the turmoil in Alabasta, some foreign merchant ships are still selling supplies here. Including food, meat, medicine, and various daily necessities. There are also some antique businessmen who took the opportunity to come here to buy some antiques. Because Alabasta is an ancient civilization, many cultural relics have huge reserves. Coupled with the war, many businessmen want to take the opportunity to buy the antiques they want. In addition to the above two main categories, there are also some arms merchant ships who also come here. The owners of these arms merchant ships came to Alabasta from all over the world full of arms because they smelled the huge profits brought by the war. However, many of these merchant ships have undergone strict camouflage, because after the Alabasta Civil War, the world government strictly blocked the transportation of weapons to Alabasta. Therefore, These arms merchant ships have undergone strict camouflage. The port city before Weiwei's eyes was, like Alabasta, calm on the surface, but actually hidden in crisis. In addition to all the trouble to deal with, there's also the Baroque studio to watch out for. Let's get ready. Next, we need to contact the rebel army in Cattleya. Cattleya is the base camp of the rebel army. It's in the east of Rapeseed Flower, Weiwei said to Sanji and Nami. Okay, now is the most critical step, Sanji said. Yes, the rebel army is now on the offensive. If we want to negotiate, we need to spend far more energy than appeasing the king's army, Weiwei said. The most difficult thing is coming, now you need to appease the rebel army. Vivi, how do we appease the rebel army? Sanji asked. This is really difficult, but I need to meet their senior management, Weiwei said. Sanji picked up the cigarette in his mouth again and took it away from his mouth. Weiwei, I have an idea. Since we need to be able to make the other party willing to listen to us, then we also need to show that we have strength. Didn't Ver give us half of the fleet? These can be used as backing. After all, in this world in many cases, strength is still needed to speak. Sanji looked at the 8 warships moored at the port. 8 large warships meters long with powerful weapons and troops. These people can be said to be extremely powerful mobile troops along the coast. Weiwei looked at these warships and thought for a while. Nami also said from the side, Weiwei, this is very good. Let's use them. For such a dangerous matter, Nami is naturally willing to have more backing. Weiwei was silent for a long time and said, although I think the most important thing in negotiations is facts and sincerity, under the current circumstances we still need to use all available resources. Nami said happily, that's right. Sanji was also very happy, and said, although it is enough to have me as a gentleman, but the opponent has thousands of troops, so it would be better to have more helpers. Sanji thought for a while, and said, one more thing, we can use the name of the mediation envoy from Drum Kingdom to contact the rebel army. This way, they will not reject us all at once when they see that we have some strength. Well, your method is very good, Weiwei said. Although Weiwei admires sincerity and facts, strength still speaks in this world. Therefore, in many cases, some strength is needed for backup work. Nami also suddenly had a good idea, and quickly said, I also have a good idea. Didn't we bring a lot of supplies and treasures from the Drum country together? Can we give the rebels a sum of money before the negotiation, so that it is even less likely that they will refuse our request for negotiation? Because everyone had made great contributions to the magnetic Drum country, the entire magnetic Drum country was grateful to everyone. So a large number of gold treasures were given. After arriving off the coast of Alabasta, the battle plan was formally established, and the fleet was split into 2. Naturally, Nami installed all her treasures on this fleet for safety reasons. This kind of proposal can be said that Nami voluntarily spent money to do things. After Sanji heard this, he looked at Nami with great admiration. Nami, you really impress me. You don't hesitate to spend money to help your friends, Sanji said very appreciatively. Nami waved her hand, and said confidently, where is it, but you need to know, Weiwei. After it's done, I need 3 times the reward. Sanji's appreciative smile froze immediately. Nami is worthy of being Nami, and this little effort should be rewarded with high rewards. After hearing this, Weiwei stayed for a while and said, if you want to say it's cash, it's because of the long-term civil war in Alabasta, but if you give everyone priceless antiques, then it's no problem. After hearing this, Nami's eyes still glowed golden and said, that's okay. We can just exchange the antiques ourselves. Weiwei looked at the warships and said, then we have decided on a big strategy now. We can open the door to negotiate with the rebel army first. But we still need to discuss it with the people in the fleet. The 3 began to discuss with the officers of the fleet, preparing for specific actions as soon as possible. Rapeseed flour is mixed here, except for Wei who just arrived and can have a decisive impact on the situation. There is another powerful force at work here. On a remote coast of Rapeseed flour, a Navy fast-mast warship is moored here. The ladder is set up. "Please get down, Colonel," said a strong-armed Marine sergeant. "Thank you for your hard work." A burly, exaggerated man descended a ladder on the side of the warship. The man was wearing a navy jacket on his upper body, and the muscles on his chest were as developed as steel. Behind him is a 2-meter-long 10 hands. The man had 2 cigars in his mouth, and his face was not only tough but also a bit ferocious. This man is Captain Smoker. Smog, known as the Smoker Hunter, was very angry because the Mary entered the Great Route, and led Dashiki to the Great Route on his own initiative. Smoker stepped firmly onto the land of Alabasta. Behind him, Dashiki, wearing a jacket and holding Zanshiger, also stepped onto the ground. Smoker looked up at the sky. The clear sky was cloudless, but the dry and hot wind kept blowing on his face. "Alabasta, one of the oldest countries among the countries under the world government, we are finally here," Smoker said. Daisuke looked around. This desolate scenery was full of mystery to her, a girl full of persistence. But she knew very well that she came here to track down her target, the pirate hunter Roronozoro. "Colonel Smoker, let's start to find a way to chase those pirates," Daisuke said. Smoker looked back at her and said, "The situation here is very complicated. If you are right, Alabasta is already in a period of civil war. It is very difficult for us to come here to catch those pirates." "Easy." Dashiki and Smoker said, "The enemy intelligence we eavesdropped on before seems to have some internal problems in Alabasta. And it seems that the group of pirates was involved in the Revolutionary War of the Drum Country. They seem to have become local heroes. But there's no doubt they got here." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 154. Smoker turned his head to look at Dashiki again and said, "The pirates are here, and they seem to be following an important figure in Alabasta. Now that Alabasta is deep in civil war, they must be fighting against the civil war here. It has a huge relationship." After listening to Smoker's words, Daisuke was thoughtful. "Then Colonel Smoker, what should we do next?" "Looking for clues about the pirates here is like looking for a needle in a haystack," Dashiki said. Smoker moved his wrist and pulled the 10 hands off his back. 10 hands pointed at the ground below and poked down hard. The ground on the ground was shaken by Smoker's strength, and a group of cracks were formed. "This is also the problem we face. After all, we are a group of pirates, but we have to find a way," like the Smoker said. It was because of his bravery and experience that Smoker dared to go to sea without authorization. In the past, there were times when information was insufficient and difficulties abounded. But Smoker still caught the pirate and brought him to justice. This time Smoker is determined to capture Roger and Luffy. For Smoker and his party, there are many difficulties at the moment. About 150 elite soldiers of the Naval Landing Force on the warship disembarked. A Navy sergeant came up to Smoker and saluted him. "Colonel Smoker, please give instructions on the next step," the sergeant said. Smoker looked at him, and looked at the town of Rapeseed Flour with his eyes. "Let's land in the town first for supplies. We can collect intelligence on the way," Smoker said. "Yes," the sergeant said. The warship Smoker was on is still moored there. Smoker and Dashiki led 150 elite soldiers to the port city of Rapeseed Flour. While walking in, Dashiki observed the surrounding scenery. The scenery of this desert kingdom is really vast. It's just that the surroundings of this port city are filled with spectacular deserts and gobi deserts. To find a group of pirates in such a vast desert kingdom is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Dashiki looked at Smoker and said to him, "Smoker, you are my senior, and more importantly, you have served in the Navy for many years. Don't you know anyone in Alabasta?" After hearing this, Smoker was silent for a while, and finally a cloud of smoke came out of his mouth. "You're asking me if I know the Navy who works in the Alabasta area. I do know her, and she is a person who has a very good relationship with me. But I don't like to trouble her," Smoker said earnestly. Daisuke didn't say anything after hearing this. Smoker has always acted on his own, and is rarely willing to accept help from others. Smoker and his party continued to the city of rapeseed flowers. After Smoker arrived in Alabasta, 2 other forces also subordinate to the world government were in action. But unlike Smoker and the others, these 2 forces act here under direct orders from the world government. In the urban area of Rapeseed Flower, in a hotel facing the sea. In a room on the 3rd floor of the hotel, a slender middle-aged man sat on a chair. Keep flipping through the files in front of you. Beside him, 2 burly men in black suits stood aside. Their suits all had the 5-beaded cross-shaped logo of the world government. The long face of the middle-aged man bears 2 fine mustaches that glance to one side. He kept stroking his beard while fiddling with the papers in front of him. The document he was looking at clearly stated, "About special operations in the Alabasta region, investigation into the origin of the Civil War." CP3 submitted. The middle-aged man was a little annoyed after flipping through the document repeatedly, and put the document back on the table. "It's difficult, the conspiracy of this Civil War is really hard to solve," the middle-aged man said with a sigh. Just as the middle-aged man felt annoyed and drank a cup of coffee, someone knocked on the door of the room suddenly. A man in a black suit behind him, or an agent, walked to the door of the room immediately. "Password, solve the mystery," the man in the black suit asked the person outside the door. "Password, go all out," the person outside the door replied. The man in the black suit then opened the door, and several people in gray and white cloaks walked in. A total of 3 people walked in. They then took off the gray and white cloaks on their bodies, revealing the black suits inside. The top of the suit is the same as the previous 2 men, with the pattern of the world government printed on it. They all saluted the middle-aged man, and then said, "Sir Phlox, we are back." Phlox looked at the 3 of them, and then said, "Thank you for your hard work. Did you get any important information from your trip to Aruba this time?" The 3 of them glanced at each other, and the person in the middle said, "Sir, this time we conducted an investigation in Aruba. The situation in the capital is very serious now. Aruba and the surrounding areas are under a high degree of military martial law and combat readiness status. But they are on the defensive as a whole. As long as the rebels don't attack, then nothing will happen there." Well, this has been confirmed many times. But I still want more important information, that is, the mysterious organization we discovered before. It seems to be a force called the Baroque Studio, and what are their actions? Continue to ask. The agent continued, "There are often attacks against the king's army in Arupena, but it is difficult to know how many of them are caused by the Baroque Studio. After all, there are people in the kingdom who are dissatisfied with the king, or undercover agents of the rebel army. They could all do those things." Flux stroked his beautiful beard and said, "This is reasonable, but if the Baroque Studio arranges people there, I am worried that there will be a greater threat." At this point, everyone in the room became nervous. Think about it, our intelligence shows that Baroque Studio is going to provoke a civil war in Alabasta. So what is their best way to make the situation more chaotic? That is to assassinate or kidnap King Nefertali. Cobra Phlox said deeply. As soon as Pholix spoke, everyone's expressions became more serious. This is also expected. The purpose of the Baroque Studio is to plunge Alabasta into unprecedented chaos, so this is also very possible, Fox continued. He looked back at the document in hand. Since the Civil War broke out in Alabasta, the world government has not made any moves. Although the 800-year-old administrative machine is already very rigid. However, Alabasta is one of the largest affiliated countries under the world government, so the world government dispatched its directly affiliated spy agency CP3 to investigate. Phlox is the commander of CP3. More than a year ago, Phlox led CP3's elite agents to come here and conduct a secret investigation. CP3 agents went to various major areas in Alabasta to explore the secrets, including Arupana, Rapeseed, Kingdom Newport, Rainland, and more than 10 important large oasis cities for rigorous investigation. Eventually a mysterious Baroque workshop was discovered lurking here, carrying out its activities. And even more incredible is the owner of the Baroque studio. Fox looked at the documents on the table again. "Is it really you, Crocodile?" Phlox said. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 155. All kinds of evidence previously collected by CP3 showed that the boss behind Baroque Studio was probably Crocodile. However, this cannot be believed. After all, Crocodile is the majestic king of the Kabuki. With that kind of status, why would Crocodile be like this? In terms of wealth, in addition to using enemy ship capture licenses to plunder the wealth of other pirates, Crocodile also owns a large amount of wealth and industry in Alabasta. He won't be short of money. There is no status or money, so why take the risk of subverting Alabasta? This is a very serious crime. Why Rox couldn't figure out why Crocodile did this. But there was another thought in Phlox's mind. Is Crocodile involved with forces like the Revolutionary Army? However, there is still a huge question. The Revolutionary Army does often subvert the participating countries of the world government in the Grand Route and the Four Seas region. But those countries are basically ruled by powerful people. The king of Alabasta, Nefertali Cobra, is a great monarch known far and wide. Every time the world meets, the king speaks impassionedly, demanding reform. If the Revolutionary Army attacks the rule of the world government from the outside in a violent way, then there are kings and politicians like Cobra calling for moderate reforms. At least the Revolutionary Army will not be targeting Alabasta. Furox understands very well that although he is the chief of the spy organization of the world government, he is very clear about the actions of the Revolutionary Army in major issues. Moreover, Crocodile himself is sinister and selfish, and will not work with the Revolutionary Army. Could it be that he was looking for something? Phlox guessed. Even Fuluox and CP3 cannot explain the situation they are facing now. But now it has been basically determined that Crocodile and Baroque Studio are the culprits of the civil war. Fox stood up and looked at the 5 agents in the room. The 5 agents in front of him all looked at him. "Everyone, after more than a year of our investigation, we have confirmed the conspiracy of Crocodile and Baroque Studios. Now this result basically has no other options. People who can do this kind of thing in Alabasta secretly, except he has no one else. More importantly, our agents who have managed to break into the Baroque Studio have also confirmed this. Our next step is to report the information directly to the world government and listen to instructions. As for the decision-making power, there are still they decided. I will further revise the document immediately, and then report it up. Everyone will continue to monitor the Baroque Studio in each city," Furox said very seriously. The agents also had no objection. But then one person asked, "Sir, besides us, there is another fleet that has arrived at the port of Rapeseed Flower. According to information, this fleet is from the Magnetic Drum Kingdom." Phlox was silent for a while after listening, and then said while stroking his fine beard, "The fleet comes from the Kingdom of the Drum. Yes, they just arrived today. And they are resting here. It seems that there is still action. And Alabasta is in the middle of a civil war, and the Drum Country has just fought a short but fierce revolutionary war." "This is a bit strange," said the agent. "I know this. A bloody civil war began in the Drum Country. The revolutionary forces led by former Minister Dalton overthrew the former King Wapol. Wapol himself died violently. Dalton established a new government. Speaking of this, Walpole was the king who led the Sigo kingdom into a super-industrial power during his lifetime, but it is said that he was very greedy and cruel, and at that time, the total amount of arms purchases by the Sigo kingdom was among the best in the world. Since the revolution, will these warships? It is too far-fetched to say that forces loyal to the former king came here to take refuge, and there are countless places suitable for refuge, Phlox said in confusion. So sir, what should we do next? The agent asked. We're short on men now, but let's send someone to keep an eye on them, said Phlox. Okay, sir, the agent said. The three CP3 agents who came in before were about to leave, but Phlox quickly stopped them. By the way, there is one more thing. What about the news about the captain of the Navy headquarters Hina and her troops who are here to mediate? Fox said. An agent said, regarding Colonel Hina, she is now serving as a mediator in Aruba instead of the Navy. She led about a few hundred soldiers in the capital to discuss information with the king. Gina also represented the Navy in contact with the rebels before. However, the rebel army is not willing to accept her mediation at all. Her fleet seems to be still in the area of the Sandora River. After hearing this, Phlox said naturally, of course. After all, although Hina is a colonel at the naval headquarters in Alabasta, she is only a colonel after all. She is insignificant to the king. Even Cobra, no matter how kind she is, she can't shake Cobra's ideas. Moreover, the king's army is already on the defensive. As long as the rebels don't attack, everything will be fine. When facing the rebels, Hina plays the lute to a cow, and the rebels hate the king extremely. There is no way she, a naval captain, can stop her. Besides, if we are talking about reporting intelligence to the superiors, how can she be compared with CP3? After civil strife broke out in Alabasta, the world government also ordered surrounding navies to quickly investigate the situation and mediate. The Navy on the surface and the spy organization CP3 secretly operate independently. Colonel Hina is in charge of the Navy in Alabasta. She is known as Black Threshold. However, the Alabasta Civil War was fierce, with millions of troops fighting each other. The small fleet and force led by the Hinaites did nothing to stop the civil war. The world government was exhausted from suppressing the revolutionary army and pirates everywhere. But now Alabasta is in such a big trouble again. If it is really possible to mobilize heavy troops, then I don't know how many years it will take. As for CP3, they are also worried that if Hina, who is very clear about the local situation in Alabasta, wins favor with the proposed solution, it will be the same as CP3 having no credit. Anyway, it is our CP3 that gets the most credit in the end, and no one can shake this, Phlox said. The three previous agents then leave the room. Fox proceeded to revise his file report. Before you know it, it's night. Under the light, Phlox happily organized the documents and took out a special encrypted telephone bug. This kind of phone can send telegrams remotely and is extremely difficult to be eavesdropped. Once this top-secret report document is in Wulaoxing's hands, it will trigger an earthquake. Fox picked up the organized documents and said admiringly. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee-Er a Dream. Chapter 156. Phlox telegraphed the top-secret documents to the World Government Administration Center in the Holy Land of Mary Joel. There, the intelligence personnel who had already been waiting accepted the information, and then submitted it to the world's highest power group, the 5 Old Stars. The second day of Rape Blossoms finally arrived, this day in the east of Rape Blossoms. Waiwei, Sanji, and Nami rode in a carriage together, and under the cover of a large number of fleet soldiers, they began to move towards the eastern region. Since the base camp of the rebel army, Katlia, is an inland city, it happens to be located in the northeast region of rapeseed flowers. Therefore, after discussing with the fleet officers, Wei Wei led a large number of fleet soldiers to land as a cover, and headed towards Katlia. On the carriage, Sanji talks to Vivi and Nami. Wei Wei, the scenery here is really nice. Nami looked around and said. Wei looked at Nami, knowing that her words were to ease the atmosphere. Alabasta is a desert kingdom, and there are many beautiful scenery here, Wei said. The surrounding scenery is indeed beautiful, surrounded by endless desert and dry wind. Not that there are some desert plants. Since it is morning now, the sunlight here is not very strong yet. Everything around me seemed to have not yet awakened from its deep sleep. Sanji looked at Wei and asked, Wei, since you dare to go to the rebels to negotiate, then I'm afraid you have some confidence. Do you know someone? Sanji has already seen Wei's thoughtfulness. Wei looked at Sanji and said, well, there is someone I know among the high-level rebel army. Sanji looked at Vivi. The princess in front of him seemed to want to say something but did not continue. Oh, through this person, you can try to open up the negotiation. Of course that's fine, Sanji said. It's not hope, but that there is no other choice, Wei said. Vivi thought back to the young leader of the rebel army, who had been her childhood friend. But unexpectedly, he eventually became the leader of the current rebel army. About 2,000 fleet soldiers disembarked from the warship and hired a large number of carriages and horses to go to Katla. These wagons also carried some gold and food supplies. After all, this is a better way to open up the negotiation situation. After marching all the way, the team of 2,000 people finally arrived outside the city of Katla. The outskirts of the city where the rebels were stationed were protected by a group of fortifications. But it is different from the powerful and solid city wall in Aruba. The city used to be undefended. It's just that in recent years, fortifications have been built for defense during wars. However, due to the absolute advantage of the rebel forces in the southeastern region of Alabasta, there is basically no need for too strict defense. Of course, the city was manned with a formidable force. A large number of simple barracks and warehouses can be seen outside the city. Sanji, who was sitting on the carriage, looked towards the east. This is it, Katla, Sanji said. Wei looked at the city and said, here we are, our destination. Seeing the city in front of her, Wei's heart was pounding. This was the base camp of the rebel army. Nami looked at Katla and said, it really looks like a dilapidated city. There is no prosperity here. But the arrival of 2,000 people made Katla immediately nervous. Immediately, two groups of mixed infantry and cavalry troops surrounded from both sides. The two rebel groups appeared to be well dressed and well trained. It's not like some stragglers at all. Sanji, Wei, and the drum soldiers were quickly surrounded by two rebel groups. The two groups of rebels each have more than 1,000 people, and their total number is about the same as the soldiers of the Sigo kingdom. However, the soldiers of the Sigo kingdom were surrounded very tightly. The infantry and cavalry of the two rebel groups raised their rifles and aimed at the soldiers of the magnetic drum country. Who are you? A burly rebel officer riding on a burly warhorse came out from the left and asked everyone. At this time, Sanji quickly jumped out of the carriage. Go straight to the front of the officer. Sanji walked up to the officer and looked at him. The officer looked at Sanji, who was wearing a suit and holding a cigarette butt in his mouth, and asked, who are you? Hello, we are the mediation envoys of Drum Kingdom. We are here to meet with the high-level leaders of your rebel army, Sanji said calmly. The officer looked at Sanji and said, we have never heard of the mediator from the Drum Kingdom. You should leave quickly. Wait a minute, Sanji's tone became more serious. Then he threw the cigarette butt out and said with a serious face, please help me accommodate. And we have some gold and materials here to help you. After all, you rebels also need money and materials. With a wave of Sanji's hand, several military officers from the Magnetic Drum Kingdom hurriedly led the soldiers to pull out more than a dozen carriages. In front of the officer, the gold and grain on the carriage were shown to him. The officer was also moved when he saw the gold and food. After all, the rebel army was also very difficult and needed a lot of food and money. The officer looked at the gold and food and looked at Sanji again. He was still thinking, but Sanji looked at him very seriously. "You really want to find our high level, then I can help inform you," the officer said. The expression on Sanji's face relaxed a little, and he said, "Thank you so much." The officer gave some orders to his subordinates, and hurriedly galloped towards the city of Katla. However, Sanji and Wei Wei's team of people have always been under the supervision of the rebels. Sanji, Vivi, and Nami have been waiting for a long time. It is now noon, and the sun in the sky is getting stronger and stronger. I saw the horse galloping for a while, and finally the officer came back. "Everyone, you can enter Katreya city now. However, only the envoys responsible for negotiations can enter. The other soldiers are stationed in the area around the city, and we will make arrangements," the officer said to Sanji. "It's like this, okay then," Sanji said. Sanji then said something to some officers of Magnetic Drum Country, and called Vivi, Nami, and several officers to the city of Katla. Most of the 2,000 soldiers were stationed in the area outside the city. Sanji rides in a carriage with Vivi and Nami. Several coordinating officers rode on horses. Guarded by the officer and a group of rebel cavalry, the group entered the city of Katla. Sitting on the carriage, Vivi, Sanji, and Nami looked around while thinking. What will be faced is a more difficult negotiation. Whether the other party can cease the war is a difficult problem.